Warning, the following episode contains discussions on drug use and some explicit language. Listener discretion is advised. And welcome back to Dog with a Bone podcast. This is episode 2, Stuck in the Mud. Please make sure to like and follow us on Dog with a Bone Facebook page to join in on the investigation as we move through the season. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can also subscribe to Dog with a Bone podcast so you do not miss an episode, wherever you listen. To provide a recap in the last episode, we heard about Bernie and his life growing up in Marysville. We learned Bernie had been diagnosed with cerebral palsy as a young toddler and was smaller in size as a young man. Bernie did not let being diagnosed with cerebral palsy get him down, but just the opposite. He continued to work hard and live his life. We also heard how hard his dad tried to uncover the truth of who murdered his son, but unfortunately died before ever seeing justice served. The good news for us is his dad left all of his notes for us to pick up right where he left off. If you have not listened to the first episode, I recommend going back to catch up. Once I returned to Florida, I contacted Jeff Stiers from the Union County Sheriff's Office. His name and number were listed on the flyer. I introduced myself to Jeff and my personal experience working with the prosecuting attorney's office in Parkersburg. As I explained what I was calling about in regards to Bernie's case, Jeff was not familiar with it. He asked for a few days to get caught up on the case, which I can understand and appreciate. He did not want to give me false information. People will ask what it means when a case is open and active or open and inactive. What's the difference? For example, Bernie's case was an open case, but inactive. Nobody was actively working his case. This just means when anyone calls in a tip or information, then the case may become active while the investigator follows up. Since there had been no new leads or information, Bernie's case remained in the inactive status. Jeff followed through on what he said he would, which is so refreshing. He checked with his boss at the sheriff's office. He contacted the Bureau of Criminal Investigation and Marysville PD to determine where the case stood. Jeff also agreed to hold a meeting at the sheriff's office for Paula and Steve to come in to discuss Bernie's case with all involved. I was able to join by Zoom. I will say this. All the law enforcement present at that meeting were very compassionate, apologetic, and open to Paula as she discussed what she remembers and her concerns. Paula cried. She felt heard for the first time and could feel the energy in the room being positive. And again, she became hopeful. This was a big step in Bernie's case to have a sit down after all these years and be heard. We all left that meeting feeling cautiously optimistic that Union County and Marysville were determined to solve Bernie's case. At this point, Jeff explained the 3 agencies and the prosecuting attorney's office were going to meet in person and review the case and decide who would be best to take the lead. As I wait for the update on the meeting, I continue the investigation into the burglary.
Drug king, who was for years one of the world's most wanted men, was gunned down today by Colombian police in the Colombian city of Medellin. His drug cartel was named for the city he controlled for so long. He was only 44, old enough for cocaine to have made him one of the richest men in the world, rich and ruthless enough to have hundreds of people who got in his way killed.
On December 2nd, 1993, Escobar jumped from rooftop to rooftop, trying to escape along with his bodyguard, and were taken down by police. It is estimated Escobar controlled about 80% of cocaine in the United States. Escobar was admired, feared, and hunted by thousands, and everyone knew his name. 9 days after Escobar was killed in a whole other country, in the small town of Marysville, Bernie would be murdered, and he too was involved with cocaine. But to what degree? How deep was Bernie into the coke scene? As an investigator, it is critical, in any case, to study the victim, the crime, and those around the victim leading up to their death. When someone is involved with what is referred to as, quote, high-risk lifestyle, it often can increase one's chance of being a victim of a crime. Now, this does not mean anyone deserves to be a victim of a crime based on what life they choose to live, nor that their case should receive any less attention or not even have a full investigation. But unfortunately, that does happen. I begin to dig into just how big of a part did drugs play in Bernie's life, and were they a factor in his murder? I was able to get on the phone with Mike, who was very good friends with Bernie. I wanted to understand more about Bernie's life and his involvement in drugs.
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Oh, good. Thank you for calling me back.
Oh, no problem. Bernie was my dude.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
Yeah, he's my little buddy.
Aw, that's so good to hear. I'm like wanting to talk to people who knew him and cared for him and just had stories to share, and then who were around at that time that he was murdered.
Yep, I was around.
So how did you know Bernie?
I met him when I was about 18 years old. He worked out of Honda, and one of his buddies lived in the same apartment complex I did, so we ended up hanging out, and then we just became great friends. We hung out pretty much every weekend for years.
Oh, really? What kind of person was he? Was he fun? Was he laid back?
Oh, he was laid back, sweet guy. He would do anything for anybody. He was a really good guy. He was just a nice guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't big, so it wasn't like he could be physically intimidating. Mm-hmm. But he'd hang out, and we would party and have a great time.
Aw, yeah, that's what I've heard is like he was really a small guy.
Yeah, he's a tiny little man.
Yeah,
tiny.
yeah.
I mean, anybody that would beat up on Bernie should probably be flogged and tarred and feathered. There's nothing to gain for hitting on a man like him.
Right. And I heard he kind of, like, people looked after him, like yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Everybody looked out for him. He was a good guy.
Okay. And so did you hang out with Bernie after work or at Steffen's or any of those bars?
Well, we would go to Steffen's, but we would hang out at his house and over at Pete's, and we'd run around and do stuff.
Okay, so you were pretty close to him back then.
Oh, absolutely. We were really tight together pretty much every day.
Okay.
For years.
Good. Okay. So then tell me, I mean, I know that he did coke and sold coke, and I'm not interested. I don't care. I wanted to let Mike know I was already aware of the drugs Bernie did and that he kept coke in his safe. Sometimes people are hesitant to share this part of someone's life as to not put them in a negative light. So I wanted to put Mike at ease. Again, just because someone chooses to live a higher risk lifestyle still does not mean someone else can take their life. I'm not going to judge Bernie or anyone else. I'm after the truth. I'm trying to solve a murder. So I really wanted to know, how much coke did Bernie keep in his safe? How much coke he would possibly keep in his safe at a time? Do you...
At an ounce at best.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not like he's dealing keys or nothing like that. It was nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing like that. An ounce. I mean, if he had 2 ounces, it was a big deal.
Okay.
So an ounce, yeah, it wasn't like he was some kingpin, honcho cocaine dealer, nothing like that.
Does he sound like an Escobar to you? Right. I've heard he was a small town, meaning like only to his friends. Like he would.
Yep, he'd hook all the people he worked with. We hung out. I mean, it was a pretty selective crew. Actually, in the 80s, you had to be really careful.
As Mike was throwing out kilos, grams, I found myself lost on exactly how much coke were we talking about. My team and I took a crash course in metrics. I'm a visual person, so I needed an image that I could compare to. If you are a visual person like me, here's what we found out. A kilo is 1,000 grams. That would equal to like a bowling pin. 36 grams is in an ounce. That would be about a fourth of a cup. An 8-ball has 3.5 grams. You know those little plastic bags that you see in the movies? Those are 8-balls. A U.S. penny is 3 grams, just to give you an idea. In 1993, I am told an 8-ball was worth $75. And according to Mike, Bernie would have no more than an ounce, again, a fourth of a cup, to a half an ounce at most. Do you know if he ever kept cash in his safe?
Oh, God, yes.
Do you know how much or how, like...
minimum 10 grand at a time, I'd say.
Okay.
So, I mean, I seen the safe with more in it. But there was constantly a hustle going, you know?
Okay.
A way to subsidize some money. And, I mean, he kept it on the down low. I couldn't believe, everybody knew that he partied, and we knew that the cops knew what we did and all that shit. But we were young. We didn't give a shit.
We will go over exactly what was found inside Bernie's safe in the upcoming episodes. I then asked Mike if he knew Eric, who was with Bernie the night of the murder. Eric also considered himself one of Bernie's best friends. So you were hanging around with Eric?
I didn't really like Eric. I knew him and we would party a little bit, but he wasn't. No, I didn't really like him. I didn't hang out with him.
Okay. Is there anything particular you didn't like about him that you knew was kind of off?
He's just a shady-ass punk.
Yeah, because I know in 93, around this time, he was hanging out with Bernie a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he run around with John.
He did?
Yes.
Okay. In 93?
Yes. Yeah, he hung out with John. They were kind of buddies. Well, Bernie wanted me to beat the hell out of John.
For what?
Because John had been steady breaking into his house, stealing drugs. So it got to the point where Bernie would leave some out that he could find easily so he wouldn't tear his shit up. Because, it's not like you can call the cops, hey, man, this idiot's breaking in my house, stealing my cocaine.
So if Bernie felt or knew that John was stealing from him, how did he know that? Like, what did he give you any examples of how he knew it was John?
John would talk smack to Bernie about it.
Really?
He kind of bragged. He was kind of proud of himself.
And so he would talk shit to Bernie like, I've been stealing your stuff?
Yeah, I know where it's at. I know you got this. I know you got that. And I don't know how he was getting in the house. Well, the night that it happened, they came through the side of his house.
How was he breaking in? Didn't he have an alarm system?
I have no clue how he was getting in. But he was breaking in, stealing cocaine. Bernie wanted me to beat him up. And we were just waiting for the opportunity to get it off.
Yeah.
And it just never happened. This is in Union County. At the end of the 80s, early 90s, it really switched.
Yeah.
They'd lock you up and, okay, yeah, here, we'll just lock you up.
Right.
They put you in jail, especially if you had a name, and I did.
Right.
I was a punk-ass kid.
I confirm Bernie did have an alarm system. When reviewing the order form, it is hard to tell exactly when the alarm system was installed. It was either November 1992 or 1993. Bernie's dad kept the receipt, but wrote over the year with either the 2 or 3, so it's difficult to know 100%. I reached out to Paula, and she could not remember. If the alarm was installed in 1992, how was John still breaking into the home? Mike was not familiar with the alarm system, so maybe it was newer. So I have, and I'm just trying to sort this out. Were you around Bernie that when he was murdered around that time? Were you in the area?
Yes, I was in Plain City.
This is about 15 minutes from Marysville. So Eric was around him a lot and hanging out with him. And you're recalling that Eric had a relationship with John.
Yes.
What about Alan?
Oh, my God. Oh, Alan. He was married to my cousin.
Yeah, he's dead, isn't he?
Yeah. He died down Dayton. Got in a big police chase. And had a car accident and died. He was married to my cousin, Tabby.
Okay, I've been trying to reach her, and she hasn't returned my call or won't talk to me yet. So,
Really?
if you can...
I'll give her a call. She's married to my best friend since we were in kindergarten now.
Well, shit, Mike, look at that. All right. I love it. Yeah, let her know I want to talk to her. As you will find out, Mike knows everyone. I still have not connected with Tabby, but continue to try. Mike carries on with his thoughts about Alan. Okay, so I just want to run...
Alan was shady as hell, too. Bad.
Yes, yeah.
I've never known a man so slick as a thief. Well, him and John are the ones that broke into the VFW. Alan told me that to my face. Him and John, and I got accused of it.
What?
Alan and I would hang out and fish and go arrowhead hunt together. I didn't know. I mean, I knew he'd been in prison for stealing, but I didn't know he was like a professional thief. So he and I, we're hanging out, smoking weed, fishing, arrowhead hunting and shit. Well, I got arrested for fighting in public, and this detective comes and gets me out of my cell. And, he's being real nice, and all of a sudden he just this guy was a big bastard when I was 18 years old. He was a big dude. He slams the table, and he's like, I want to know every fucking thing about you and Alan and the fucking safe at the VFW. I was like, what?
Wow.
What are you talking about, dude? I mean, I had no clue. I didn't even know the VFW had been robbed, let alone for a goddamn safe,
Right.
So I'm sitting there, I'm talking to the man, I'm like, Chief, I mean, there's a lot of things that I am, a thief ain't one of them. That's just not my thing. I don't steal.
Right.
Anybody can look at my record. I've worked my whole life since I was a little kid. I've worked. I paid for my drugs and shit as I went. I didn't steal and do all that dumb shit.
Right.
But he
from the VF.
Yes, him and John stole the safe out of the VFW wall. They got like $30,000, $40,000 out of it.
Whoa! Back then in
the 80s.
Wow.
Yeah, that's like $150,000 now. And they squandered every penny of it.
According to those close to John and Alan, they also broke into the Broadway bar and stole guns. They sold those guns for weed. It sounds like these two guys took whatever opportunity they could to steal money or drugs to support their habit. Mike then shares with me what he was doing when he received the news of Bernie's death. You always remember what you were doing. Yeah, the next day.
Yeah, that next day when they found him, I was bowling that night. Pete called me. Okay. And Pete and Bernie were inseparable.
Is Pete still around?
Oh, yeah, he's married to my cousin.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. You're like my hookup. You're my hookup, Mike.
Him and Bernie worked together for 28 years out at Honda.
I have tried to speak with Pete, and he has declined talking to me. I'm hoping he changes his mind. For someone who, as Mike said, was inseparable from Bernie, I believe he could help provide a lot of the missing pieces of that night and the next day. I reassured Mike again to tell Pete nobody cares about drugs that he did, bought, or sold. We are investigating a murder, not drugs from 1993. I continue to try and speak to Pete, and hopefully Mike puts in a good word about me. Mike ends our conversation with, again, telling me how great Bernie was, especially with his daughter. This seems to be a common trend.
I was blessed to have Bernie as a friend for the time I did. He was a good guy. Very nice guy. My little girl loved him.
Aww.
My little girl would go over, Bernie, the whole place would shut down. Period. If my little girl came over, it was a wrap. If Brittany left, ain't nothing happening here.
Aw. He loved your little girl?
Oh, he loved her.
Yeah. I heard he was good with kids.
He was great with kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was great with everybody. I mean, he was either Bernie's friend or you wasn't. And if you wasn't, you had a problem because it wasn't because of Bernie, I'll tell you that.
Everyone I've spoken to who knew Bernie socially knew he used cocaine, but all say the same thing. he only sold it to close friends. Bernie was not interested in selling to just anyone. As Mike said, Bernie kept his circles small. He also said that John was breaking into Bernie's house previously and that Bernie had asked Mike to beat him up. Bernie would then leave some coke out for John to find so he didn't trash his house. One thing to keep in mind as we move through the investigation is Eric and John were hanging out together around this time from what I am told by different sources. Eric and John have known each other since high school. After talking with Mike, what I didn't understand was why the plan failed. I decided to reach out to John via Facebook Messenger to see if he'd be willing to share his side. I had my friend Tyler read John's part. Hi, John. I'm looking into John Burnside's murder and talking to everyone who knew Bernie back in 1993. Are you available for a quick call tomorrow night?
I'm not interested. I was found not guilty. I didn't know Bernie, honestly. I wish you the best. It was water under the bridge. I went through hell back then. A lot of money to prove my innocence. Good luck.
I would love to chat, as I believe 2 different crimes happened that night.
You don't need to talk to me. As I said, I do not know Bernie. I might have seen him at the bar one time, that's it. But I do not personally know him. I have nothing to add to anything because I don't know nothing. There's nothing I have to say to you or I'm not going to block you.
John proceeded to block me. Now, I can understand why John may not want to talk given he was tried for the burglary and found not guilty. My goal in reaching out was to clarify more about that night and the events that followed. I mean, he was found not guilty, so I took my chance. But I get it. He may be afraid to talk, and maybe slip up. So I moved on to another individual, who we will call Joe. She would rather not have her name used due to fear and intimidation she faced while in Marysville. Her and Alan were dating at the time, and they were together that night. Joe was able to provide me with details of why the plan failed.
Hey, bring it this way. Come on over here. Wait, watch out.
It was raining cats and dogs, and it was in a wheelbarrow, apparently, and they were trying to wheel it around the house, and it sunk.
I am sure you are wondering, why didn't they just carry the safe out of the house instead of using a wheelbarrow? Well, the safe that Bernie had purchased weighed 600 pounds. Did they tell you the reason that they wanted to steal the safe?
They wanted the cocaine.
On December 10th at 11 p.m., the weather was 39 degrees with light winds around 13 miles per hour. The rainfall recorded was 0.17 inches. According to Joe, John and Alan wheeled the safe out of Bernie's house using the sliding glass patio door and out onto the back porch. Once they got the wheelbarrow off the porch and to the side of the house, the wheelbarrow sunk. Based on information I found, I don't believe it was raining, quote, cats and dogs, but could have been a light rain. But I tend to think maybe the ground was wet from the snow that happened on December 1st. The high temp was mid-50s during the day, so the snow could have thawed and melted. There is also a large tree that had a deep root above ground that was covered in leaves. I think maybe this is where the wheelbarrow got stuck, sunk, and tipped over.
From what I understood, the wheelbarrow sunk. I don't know if it fell over, but I know it was raining really hard. It sunk. And they came back to the bar. And me and his brother, Rainey, Alan's brother, Rainey, were there at the bar. And I want to say Eric was there too, but I can't remember. And they were trying to figure out how they were going to get it off the ground and into the trunk of the car. John and Alan were supposed to go in and get stuff, and then they were all going to split it.
It is always good to double or triple check your sources. I decided I need to get a hold of the next best thing besides Alan, his brother Ray, aka the additional help. Here's Ray.
I'm sure it had to be late. It had to be 11:30 when they came and got me, because
Yep.
Like I said, it was well into the evening. I have no idea what time the police were there at John's, but it had to be between 10:30 and midnight.
Yes. I just got, I'm looking up at my board. We just got that they called the cops at like 12:04.
Oh, so it was really late. So I was really lit when they came. It had to be about 11 or 11:30 when they came and got me then. 11:30, 11:45.
Okay. And then did they, were they hanging out for a while, or was it pretty quick? Like, hey, we need your help, let's go right back. Or were you hanging out for a while talking?
It was pretty quick. It was like they left, came, got me, and within 10 minutes was back over there. So, I mean, it was...
It was quick. How long did you think that they were there?
I mean, when they were walking through the backyard, John must have been walking in the front and then calling the police because the police beat us there. And the hideaway is only 5 minutes from John's house there.
Okay.
So it had to be a whole lot of things happening at almost the exact same time.
Do you know where they parked when they went the first time?
No.
No. Okay.
Probably somewhere in the trailer park would be my guess.
In the trailer park?
Yeah, John's property used to back right up to Marysville Estates over here, or whatever this trailer park's called.
Yep. And they would just wheel it over there.
That would be my guess. Anything else, you'd be willing to save across the street.
Okay. Yeah, it was found actually around through the back door of the patio, and it was like around to the side of the house.
Oh, so it wasn't out in the backyard? Mm-mm. Gosh, I thought it was out in the backyard. So it might have, I don't know where they parked then. They might have parked 2 or 3 houses down right in front of them.
I wonder if Bernie or Eric would have seen their truck parked there. There is a church parking lot across from Bernie's house that would be a good place to park. In 1993, Bernie's house was on a main street headed out of town. He was the last few houses before hitting the country road. So who all went back when you saw the cops? Was it you, John, and Alan, and anybody else?
That was it.
Okay. And then the cops were there, and you're like, screw this. You went back to Hideaway.
Turned around right up to the bar and closed the place down. Like, yeah, I don't know what you guys are doing. That's a dead-end street that way.
Okay. And they didn't talk more about why they knew about the safe or how that came about or what made them decide?
No, it was just supposed to be a score to them.
Okay.
My brother went down. I mean...
Yeah.
He's no saint for sure. He's done 3 or 4. He did 3 or 4, so 2.5 years, 2 years, 2.5 years here and there.
Yeah, he did.
It's for different, all for breaking in. I mean, he's always broken in and stole stuff. He's done that his whole life. He's never threatened anybody. He's never had assault charges. He was smart. He was cunning. He was manipulative. But damn, he was not a murderer.
Well, and do you know, was he physically violent with women? I've heard that he was abusive to women.
I don't think so. There again, at the end of his life, he's a lot different person, and he was towards the end. He had his wife pretty scared there towards the end.
Okay.
But that was more just he had some kind of mental illnesses. He went off the deep end like the last 10 years of his life. He went all conspiracy theories, jumping at shadows, that kind of things. But he was paranoid when he was younger too, but it wasn't to the degree that it became. The weapon charge he had on him was when he was like 18 or 19, and he had a shotgun in his pickup truck, and it was like a half mile away from where he got caught at the VFW breaking into it. I mean, so he wasn't carrying a gun. I mean, that wasn't him. That wasn't...
Yeah. No.
He was the sneaky, get in, get out while nobody's here. That's why he never would have went back and confronted John. I mean, that made no sense. I do want to mention that a few people have shared that Alan could be physically abusive. So this may be something Ray did not want to admit or know about. I really struggled with how John and Alan were found not guilty given the information I have uncovered in just a short period of time. I've spoken to 3 people around them this night, and all have the same story of the plan to steal the safe and its failure. I needed to ask Ray what he knew about the trial,
what his thoughts are on the not guilty verdict. Here's Ray again.
At the time that John was on trial, when I first went into motion for the burglary, Alan was sitting in prison at the time on a parole violation, I believe.
Okay.
They came down and contacted him at the prison. There's a story Alan told me is the sheriff showed up there with evidence for a murder indictment. And Alan took a polygraph test to get him and John out of the murder indictment, and he passed it. But in doing so, he also had to admit to the burglary part to begin with.
Right. Okay.
It was kind of like a two-edged sword. Like he kind of like what I said earlier. Heck yeah, I committed burglary, but I didn't kill the man.
Right. Exactly.
And that's how it all got hemmed up. And to me and Alan testifying against John at the burglary, it was in Alan's head. And like I said, I was 21, 20. I was young. It made sense to me that it was a way to exonerate everybody having a murder charge brought down on them. I went ahead and told the truth. And the way my brothers told it to me was, one, it was to get us off the murder indictments. And then at John's trial, he changed a little bit of the story from my story to the untruth, so the jury would think that we were just making shit up.
Yep.
So I think that's why John got found not guilty, because I think Alan just went in there and said a little bit of this that was like way off from what I was saying. Because the only thing Alan ever told me was just tell him the truth. I was just tell him the truth and don't worry about it. You just got to tell him the truth. So I think that was Alan's plan all along. He was pretty smart.
I respect Ray, who continues to tell his truth. He confirmed along with Joe that this was the plan for the night. It must not be easy for Ray telling me what he knows when this is his brother, who has committed a crime, even if they are deceased. For example, I have someone in Judy's case who refuses to talk or answer any questions about her brother or son who may have had information about Judy's death, even though both of them are deceased. As Ray told me, he doesn't have to worry about lying because he just always tells the truth. The important piece in these two calls is that both of these individuals shared the same story, that John and Alan went to Bernie's to steal the safe for the coke and cash to party with afterwards. Ray also explained why the jury came back not guilty, which was a big question for me. Unfortunately for the Burnside family, justice had failed them again. Paula recalls her thoughts upon hearing the verdict of not guilty.
And I remember we had a jury trial, and they let him off. And I remember standing up and even saying, "I'm glad he lives in your town and not mine."
So where does this leave us? We know how much coke Bernie normally kept in his safe. We also know why the heist failed according to Joe and Ray, who had inside information. This all leads me to more questions. Why would Bernie call the cops knowing drugs were in the safe? How did the cops end up with John and Alan's name as the ones who broke in? How did John and Alan know Bernie would not be home? And how did they get around the alarm system? Well, it turns out there's talk of an inside man. Next time on Dog with a Bone.
John and Eric had a thing going where they were going Eric was supposed to leave a door unlocked and then lure Burnside away from the house.
So, Jackie, let me ask you. I have inside people telling me that Eric was the one who set up the heist with John and Alan to steal the safe from Bernie.
Never. Never in a million years. Never. Nope. Nope. And I'm not liking where this is going. I'm really not liking where this was going. You asked me to be honest, and I'm trying to be honest, and I'm telling you, you are wrong.
I'm not saying
you are wrong.
Dog with a Bone is hosted, investigated, produced, and written by Melissa Sandberg. Additional writing by Caitlin Sandberg. Edited by Jason Sandberg. Theme music by Alex Yukich. Dog with a Bone is a Sasquatch production.